Hi there, welcome to this short vodcast on the beginning of the Cold War. This is for Edexcel's Unit 1 exam, International Relations 43 to 91. This and other material can be found at twitter.com/BraytonHistory via the links provided. So if we get started then, in essence this is about talking about increasing the division between the West and the East, and in particular three elements to this: the Iron Curtain speech, the long telegram, and Novikov's telegram. To help you remember, I used the doggerel. In 1945 I liked nothing, and it's, I, Iron Curtain, liked the long telegram, nothing, Novikov's telegram. Let's just show a little bit there, and obviously over here we've got the little cartoon of reaction to the kind of the Iron Curtain speech. You've got no admittance, ordered by order of Joe, that's Joe Stalin. You can see over here, kind of Soviet control of Eastern Europe and some people trying to flee. Moving on then. So, the Iron Curtain speech, made by former Prime Minister Winston Churchill, who was on a speaking tour of the United States, and the speech would have had to have been passed by the US government. He did the speech in Fulton, Missouri, and for such a speech where he's kind of critical about the state of play of Soviet control of Eastern Europe, that wouldn't have just been allowed to have occurred naturally. It would have had to have gone through State Department and even probably presidential advice. And it stated the USSR was controlling Eastern Europe, that it wasn't simply kind of oversight. They were actively ensuring Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and by reference to the Iron Curtain, that there wasn't allowed any kind of Western interference in this. Now, why is that important? If it's a 5-mark question, part of the 15 marker, why is this important? Well, it shows the degree of suspicion the West had about the Soviet Union, and it also was aimed at increasing US involvement in Western Europe. Before World War II, America was very isolationist. It didn't want to get involved in European politics, etc. And there were many Americans who believed that at the end of World War II, America would revert to that. And Truman, in essence, needed a guarantee, a motivation to increase American involvement in Europe, and this was it. So this was part of that. It was a part of that evidence to say, look, we have to do this. And as you can see here, this is Stars and Stripes, which is an American newspaper for the services, and it says, "Unite to stop Russians, Churchill warns at Fulton." And so Churchill was basically saying, look, America, you need to help us with this. You need to unite with Western European nations. But in reality, this was Truman making sure that his policy of containment could, in essence, begin. So then we get the long telegram. And this was by US Ambassador Kennan to the who's ambassador, the American ambassador to the Soviet Union, and it's to President Truman. And we actually have the telegram here. He stated Stalin had made a speech stating his intent to destroy capitalism. He said that the Soviet forces were building their military forces up, and he stated there could be no peace with the USSR whilst it was communist, and that the United States should contain communism. So, in essence, the US ambassador was giving Truman the information he needed for the Truman Doctrine. Okay, and as you can see here, this bottom section, this A here, gives an indication of that. We also get Novikov's telegram, and this is Nikolai Novikov, the Soviet ambassador to the USA, and he basically says a very, very similar thing with a Soviet perspective. He says the United States intended to dominate the world. It wouldn't be interested in cooperation with with the Soviet Union following FDR's death. That was not exactly unknown, since Truman was a fervent anti-communist, and he said that the American public were being prepared for war by capitalist elites. So, in essence, if you kind of revert back to the long telegram, it's basically a Soviet version of that. Now, the consequences of this is really summed up by this cartoon here. The Soviet perspective would see that America's trying to encroach into this kind of Soviet sphere of influence, and that they have to resist it, whereas the Americans will see that the Soviets are trying to expand their sphere of influence further out, and that they must try to contain it. So both sides mistrust one another. Both sides saw each other as their enemy, intent on controlling the world. Anything that was done by one nation for maybe a defensive purpose would be seen as by the other side as offensive. Both sides saw each other as preparing for the next conflict. Whether that was a perception or reality, it didn't matter. As far as they were concerned, that was the intent. So this, plus a speech by Churchill, the long telegram given by Churchill, allowed him to be able to push through the Truman Doctrine, which was, in essence, the kind of first policy against the Soviet Union, trying to contain it. Well, as I said, it's just a short one. It's just to go through in essence, the beginning of the Cold War. Hope it's been useful. Good luck with your exams, and the best for the future. Thank you for listening.